Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of my beginner gardener series. Today we are outside. The weather is beautiful, and so I thought what better way to do this than in the great outdoors. In today's episode is all about the best plants for beginner gardeners to be growing, and I'm going to split this up into two parts. So I'll take you through 5 today and 5 in the next video, so be on the lookout for that next video. The 5 plants that we're going to talk about today I've already got growing in my garden, so I'm going to be taking you on a bit of a garden tour during this video and telling you why these are great plants for beginners. So the 5 plants we're going to talk about is lettuce, kale, peas, dill, and tomatoes. And so let me take you to where I am growing these in my garden so we can talk all about them. Okay, so first on the list is lettuce. I got my lettuce growing here. I really love to grow romaine, but there's a few different varieties that you can choose from. And what I love about growing lettuce, it is super simple to grow from seed. It grows really fast, so you'll be eating your lettuce faster than you know it, and it is really affordable to buy. You can buy a packet of lettuce seeds for $3 and you'll get up to 1,000 seeds in it, so you'll be eating lettuce for the rest of your life off of just $3. And it is so simple to sow because they like to get light when you grow them from seed. All you have to do is sprinkle them on top of the soil and water them and wait for them to grow. It is that easy. If you are going to grow lettuce and you're sprinkling the seeds on top of the soil, once they start sprouting and get a couple sets of leaves, you're just going to want to separate them out into their own pots. That way they have some room to grow, and then you can plant them out as long as the daytime temperatures are above 0 and the nighttime stays around 0 or warmer. They can take a light frost if they've been outside long enough. However, they prefer cool temperatures but not frost. In terms of pests, lettuce don't really have any. They can get slugs on them if you have a very damp and wet place, and bunnies might eat them too, but if you grow them like me in raised beds here, then you don't really get a lot of pests. So I'm growing mine in some metal raised beds here that are about 18 inches tall, and so I actually don't get any pests on my lettuce at all, so I don't have to worry about that. And within a few weeks of planting out my plants, I'm already able to eat from them. The other good thing about lettuce is that they don't need direct sunlight. If you only have part sun, it's still a perfect plant for you to grow because they can handle some shade as well. So our second plant for beginners is kale, which you can see here at the front of the garden. I'm growing a variety called red Russian kale. And so this is another great plant for beginners because it's also super simple to start from seed, and it's also easily available at the nursery if you're buying your seedlings for your garden. And so what I love about kale is that it loves cool weather, so you can plant it out as long as the days and nights are somewhere around -4 degrees Celsius or higher. Kale will survive, and it's well known that kale tastes better when it gets hit by frost. And my plants here have thankfully been hit by 2 frosts so far this spring. And so what I love about kale is that you can harvest a leaf off of it and keep the plant growing here, so that way you can have kale all summer long. And a lot of varieties don't go to seed in the heat of the summer, so as long as you take good care of it, your kale plant will grow for you from spring straight till fall, so you can continue to harvest kale all season long. The biggest pest with kale is the cabbage moth. So it's a white moth that you'll see flying around during the daytime, and so they lay eggs on the plants and they grow into caterpillars that will eat the leaves. These caterpillars are really difficult to see because they blend in perfectly with the green of the leaves. So if you notice any damage, that's when you'll want to check for any type of caterpillar that's on your plant. But if you don't like wiping off eggs or picking off caterpillars, then I recommend putting some insect netting over top of your kale or anything in the brassica family, such as broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, or kale, and that will prevent the moth from being able to lay its eggs. You just want to make sure that you have some height from the netting on top of the plants. The netting is resting right on top of the kale, then of course they can still lay their eggs, so you just want to leave a gap between the netting and the leaves. So the third plant in this video is peas, so I'm just going to move us over right here to the next garden and let's get into talking about peas. I have them growing right back here. So they're just starting to climb up the trellis now. And so what I love about peas, other than the fact that they are super delicious, is that they're really, really easy to grow. They have big seeds, So they're really good to plant with kids if you have any. And what I love about them is that you can just plant them directly in the ground, so you don't need space inside to grow them. But when the nights are cool and the days are warm is the perfect time to plant peas. For my area in Ottawa in zone 5, that's usually about mid-April. So that is a good indicator for you of when you can plant them. And when you do plant them, make sure that you have something like a trellis or this obelisk here, because they're going to want to be able to climb up something. And so you can see I have a lot of gap here on this one where there's not a lot of, I have some old rope here from previous years, but I'm gonna add some rope or some netting on this so that way they have something to climb up, because you need to make sure that peas have somewhere to climb, because that is how they grow, and they are super delicious. They also don't really have any pests. When you first plant your peas, squirrels or bunnies might go after them. So when you do plant your seeds, you can cover them with some kind of frost cloth or something just until they sprout. And that will help keep squirrels from digging them up. And then rabbits might go after them when they're the first couple inches in height. So you do just want to make sure that you have them covered until they're a little bit larger. And then you can uncover them and let them grow up any type of trellis. Okay, let's head over to my other garden. Let's go. Okay, so the fourth plant that we have is dill, which is actually an herb. And I'm growing some here. And I'll admit, it's not the nicest looking dill you've ever seen, but I was growing it inside before I brought it out, and I was being a little lazy up potting it, and so it needs to catch up outside now. And so what I love about growing dill is that, again, this is another one that you can just directly sow outside. You don't need to start it inside, and the seeds don't mind having light for germination, so you can literally just throw seeds out in the garden. Just grab a handful and throw them out into the garden and sprinkle them around, and they will grow. They also are a cool season crop, so you can get them out earlier in the season. If you grow a dill and it goes to flower and seed, you'll notice that the seedlings the following summer will actually start quite early in the spring because they like that cool temperature. So it's just another plant that you can get a head start on earlier in the season. Somewhere around mid to late April for zone 5 is when I like to put mine out. And so apart from how delicious tasting dill is, it is a host plant for swallowtail butterflies, and so I really like including it in my garden because it brings in butterflies and gives them a place to lay their eggs and grow their baby caterpillars on. And if you are wanting to welcome these butterflies into your garden, then I suggest planting more than you would normally grow for just yourself, because these caterpillars have a very large appetite and they will eat your plants faster than you realize. So just make sure to include more in your garden than you planned on eating. The other great thing about dill is that it's easy to dry. So if you do end up planting more than you need and the butterflies don't come and you end up with a ton of dill, then you can take it inside and you can dry it and dehydrate it and use it in your kitchen all winter long. And it is so much better than the store-bought dill. Okay, so the last plant we're going to talk about today are tomatoes. And so these are really easy to grow. If you don't want to grow them from seed, they're readily available at greenhouses. And I consider these plants zombie plants. They're just impossible to kill. Even if you took off all the leaves on here, somehow it would find a way to grow all over again. They are just really, really difficult to kill. They grow really fast and they produce a ton of fruit. So these are just a really good staple in your garden, and they come in so many different varieties, from balcony sized cherry tomatoes to big giant multi-pound beefsteaks. There's just an endless variety. I did make a video on how to grow tomatoes from seed. So if you did want to check that video out, that will take you through everything you want to know if you do want to grow them from seed instead of buying them from a nursery. The benefit to growing them from seed is you just get way more variety. The two main things that you might get with your tomatoes is blight, which if you do get it, you will have to rip your whole plant out. Oftentimes, I usually get it late in the season when everything is getting cooler and more wet. So you'll just want to keep your tomato pruned and have some nice airflow around it, and watering it at the base and trying to avoid any splashback from any soil getting onto the plant. And the main pest that you might find with tomatoes is called the tomato hornworm. It is a really large moth called the 5-spotted hawk moth that lays eggs onto your tomato tomatoes, and the caterpillars are very large and they blend in very well. I've never had a hornworm on my plant, so they're not super common, but they do happen. So if you notice that your leaves have been eaten down to a stump or big black poop all over it, then you might have a hornworm, and I highly recommend checking out for one. But otherwise, these are super easy to grow, super easy for beginner gardeners, and you're pretty well guaranteed a harvest of tomatoes, so I don't know why you wouldn't want to grow them unless you absolutely hate tomatoes. But even then, you can turn them into salsa, ketchup, pasta sauce. There's so many ways to use them. If you don't like raw tomatoes, there are different ways that you can use them, and I highly recommend this as a staple in your garden. And that's everything for today's episode. If you enjoyed it, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date with all of the new episodes coming out. And stay tuned for part 2 of this episode, where I'll be taking you through another 5 plants that are amazing for beginners. Thanks for watching.